Hello, and welcome back to the Movie Memo Recaps. Today, we are going to recap a 2020 movie titled Alone. Please be advised that there will be spoilers ahead. The film begins with Jessica, a recently widowed woman, loading her belongings into a cargo trailer for a road trip. Once she has finished her preparations, she opens a map app on her phone, revealing that she is leaving for a 4-day trip out of town to begin a new life. Her travel out of town appears to be going well, and she enjoys the drive for a bit until arriving on the highway in the middle of the woods. At some point, she finds herself traveling along a quiet road, while a black automobile in front of her exhibits abnormal behavior. The black automobile is traveling too slowly, and when she tries to overtake it, it accelerates. Jessica does not want to wait any longer, so she accelerates and swerves to the other lane. However, the car mirrors her precise pace, preventing her from returning to the right lane. To make matters worse, a large vehicle appears to be heading towards her, but the black car refuses to slow down. Fortunately, she manages to overtake the automobile only seconds before the truck smashes her. However, in a matter of seconds, the black automobile accelerates to catch up with her and begins honking at her. They eventually part ways at a junction, and she stops to regain her breath from the adrenaline surge. Later that evening, she's filling up at a gas station while on the phone with her father. Based on the phone call, it appears that she is not on good terms with her mother, despite her father's request for reconciliation. In the midst of the call, she becomes sidetracked when she notices the black automobile from earlier drives up to the gas station before hurriedly leaving. Thereafter, she decides to recuperate and spend the night at a motel in town. She receives a call from her mother while she is there, but she declines to answer. Before retiring to bed, she looks at images of herself and her late husband and recalls the pleasant times they shared. She sheds a few tears as she is overcome with sadness before opting to sleep. As she prepares to leave in the morning, a shady-looking guy with an arm cast approaches her. Jessica is astonished when he announces himself as the driver of the black automobile. He uncomfortably apologizes for what happened the other day, explaining that he was texting while driving and didn't pay attention to what was going on. He then asks her additional questions, including whether she lives nearby and where she is going, which worries Jessica. As a result, she excuses herself and continues her journey. She eventually leaves town and drives on a highway through the forest. However, after some time driving, she notices the black automobile parked in the middle of the road, with the shady guy seeming bewildered. Jessica appears uneasy and immediately locks her car. She then rolls down her window a bit and lets the guy explain his situation, during which he claims that his automobile engine has suddenly died. He asks her for a ride to the nearest petrol station. Worried about her safety, Jessica advises that she go to the petrol station and send a mechanic to assist him. However, the guy refuses and insists that she come out and assist him, so she slams the throttle and drives away out of suspicion. She doesn't make her second stop until later that night at another gas station. Jessica takes a break and finally answers the phone when her mother calls. The mother is upset that Jessica decided to leave town without informing her family, but Jessica has decided to move on from her trauma. To her surprise, she spots the same car driving up to the parking lot. Jessica becomes terrified and goes to her car immediately, as it is evident that the man is following her. As expected, the stranger approaches her window, but she drives away before he can say anything. However, on her way out, a white van swoops in and blocks her path, allowing the stalker to approach her again, claiming that he is only here to use the restroom and that Jess is overreacting. Jessica chooses to ignore him and drive away as soon as the white van is out of the way. She starts driving as fast as she can because she can see the black automobile in her rearview mirror. Currently, she decides to contact 911 to report that she is being followed, but she becomes upset when the operator asks her where she is, which she does not know exactly. She panics more as the black car accelerates, but it passes her and disappears into the night, revealing that it wasn't the shady stranger's car. Jessica then tells 911 that the report is a false alarm, and she begins to calm down. But she quickly loses control of her automobile and crashes at the side of the road. When she walks outside to check, she discovers that one of her cargo trailer tires has exploded. Conveniently, the black automobile starts to approach her, instantly triggering her instinct to fight or flee. She immediately unhooks the cargo trailer from her car and hops inside, but she fails to start it on time. This time, the shady stranger decides he's had enough of pretending to be a nice guy and breaks her window immediately. Jessica fights him for a brief while, but he is stronger and quickly injects her with a tranquilizer. When she wakes up the next morning, she finds herself in an unknown room with barred windows and a lawn surrounded by barbed wire. She looks through the locked door but discovers nothing that can help her. She suddenly hears footsteps outside, which are undoubtedly those of the shady guy. He simply stares at her smugly and orders her to be silent as she begs him to let her go. The man does not come to check on her until later that night, when he shines his flashlight into the pitch-black room and approaches her with a sexual smirk. She begs him again for mercy and offers him money in exchange for her release. The man does not move and responds creepily, stating that she is not the first person to say such to him, confirming that he is a serial killer. He begs her to take her clothes off like a freak, so she lies and tells him she needs to go to the restroom. But as soon as she races towards the entrance, he knocks her to the ground. He then drags her to the center of the room and kneels on top of her, caressing her face. Next, he takes out her iPad and shows her a video of her joyful moments with her husband. He then examines the wedding ring she wears as a choker, wondering if her husband divorced her. Despite her initial reluctance to speak, she eventually concedes that her husband committed suicide, but the serial murderer was not satisfied. He forces her to reveal that her husband shot himself and that she discovered his body. When she wakes up the morning, she immediately attempts to open the door, but it remains closed. Peering through the keyhole, she discovers the key stuck to the opposite side of the door. As a result, she looks about the room until she discovers a nail stuck to a beam and rips it out with all her strength. After that, she flattens her jacket and slides it outside the door, pushing the key out with the nail. Once the key falls, she slides it inside the room and uses it to escape. Just then, the serial murderer returned home from grocery shopping, forcing her to hide inside the closet as he entered the room. She nervously watches him through the door gap, attempting to remain silent while the serial killer takes a phone call. It turns out that it comes from his family. He appears to be speaking to his small daughter, politely urging her to say hello to mommy and informing her that his business trip is going longer than expected, so he'll be home in a few days. He then hangs up the phone and goes downstairs to check out the basement. Jessica sees this as an opportunity, and she hurries out of the house and into the woods as quickly as she can. She is immediately pursued by the serial killer, who discovers she has escaped. Jessica continues to run until she slips and discovers that a twig has injured her foot, forcing her to remove it painfully. Her scream drew the killer's attention. But this does not dissuade her. She limps on till she has no alternative but to step into the river as the killer approaches her. Despite the risk of drowning, she decides to plunge into the river and let the stream carry her to the other side of the trees. At this point in the movie, it is not appropriate for her to die, therefore, she survives. The creek has washed her to the side, so she continues to go through the woods, using a branch to support herself. However, she suddenly hears footsteps, leading her to conceal and wait before hitting the man with the stem. Surprisingly, the swift attack only manages to surprise one elderly hunter. She instantly apologizes and begs for his assistance, claiming that someone is attempting to kill her and requesting to borrow his phone. Regrettably, she brutally assaulted him earlier, leaving him shattered. Feeling terrible for the woman, the hunter leads her back to his car and allows her to borrow his wife's hunting boots before driving away together. He graciously allows her to eat his lunch sandwich throughout the journey while he tries to calm her down. But then they come across a fallen tree, which blocks their path. This prompts Jessica to freak out and attempt to move the tree, but it is clearly too heavy. As if on cue, the killer drives up to them, and the old hunter advises Jessica to calm down. The man then tells the hunter that Jessica is his mentally disturbed sister who fled the house, confusing the hunter. At this point, the hunter begins to believe him and allows him to capture her. The killer then attempts to catch Jessica, but the hunter becomes suspicious of his rough handling of her and raises his gun, compelling the killer to let her go. As Jessica flees into the woods, the perplexed hunter requests to borrow the killer's phone, believing that if Jessica is truly his sister, the police will most likely confirm his claim. But it won't be so easy. He brutally abuses the old hunter before shooting him to death with the hunting rifle. Simultaneously, Jess flees deep into the woods while the now armed killer searches for her. As night falls, Jessica eventually rests on a rock under the pounding storm. Unfortunately for her, the killer is nearby, shining his flashlight about hunting for her. When she thinks everything is okay, she moves to leave, but the man is still present and shoots her in the leg. Driven by a surge of adrenaline, Jessica deftly slips past him and seeks refuge beneath the bushes while he resumes his search. The killer, now intent on instilling fear, taunts her with a chilling ultimatum. She has just 2 hours to reveal herself, or the gunshot wound will claim her life as she bleeds out. As a result, he proposes that she come out immediately and fight him while she still has the strength. To torment her even more, he lays down the gun and tells her she has 1 minute to try to get it. He continues to harass her, even referencing her late husband and labeling him a coward to incite her rage. The longer Jessica refuses to come out, the more furious he becomes, and he starts ranting and saying he's going to get her. Jessica deserves credit for not reaching for the rifle and instead waiting for the killer to pick it up and go. She then emerges from hiding and continues to wander till she falls asleep under a tree due to tiredness. The next morning, she wakes up in the middle of the jungle. She then wills herself to continue trekking across the rugged terrain until she hears the sound of a running car, which belongs to none other than the killer. He pulls out the dead hunter's body and drags it into a small hole he dug. As he prepares to bury the body, Jessica walks up to his car and attempts to open the door. It is not locked, so she enters and searches for anything that can aid her until she finds his phone. Unfortunately, when she discovers it, the killer has finished burying the man, so she swiftly rolls up to the back as he re-enters his car and resumes driving. She gets a tire wrench to equip herself and begins phoning 911, but she is unable to speak because she doesn't want to expose herself. It doesn't take long for the killer to realize his phone is missing. He looks around for it and stops the car. Jessica decides to get out and start thrashing him with a tire wrench, aware that her position is in jeopardy. The man then begins driving like a crazy person, repeatedly attempting to attack her with his hunting knife. This continued until she struck him on the arm, causing him to drop his hunting knife. She then repeatedly chokes him with the tire wrench and stabs him in the wrist, forcing him to lose control of the steering wheel and crashing the car. Jessica gets out of the wreckage, where she sees a helicopter pass while her vision blurs. After seeing the helicopter, she recovers her strength and walks till she reaches a clearing. Meanwhile, back at the wreckage, we discover that the killer is still alive. Jessica still has the killer's phone and chooses to call the man's wife to inform her that her husband is not on a business trip and is instead a serial killer. When she notices the killer approaching, she puts the phone on speaker to notify the man that she has informed his wife. Jessica proceeds to tell the wife her whole name before stating that if she dies today, it will be because her husband murdered her. This, of course, enrages the killer, who abruptly terminates the call after Jessica tosses the phone at him. The killer's look is pure desperation, and because none of them has anything to lose, they end up in a vicious battle. He fights with a knife, but Jessica has a metal weapon to defend herself. She lands quite a few hits with the wrench. At one point, the man stabs her on a limb, almost killing her, but she retaliates by biting the wound on his arm. And now it's Jessica's turn to make the fatal move. She stabs him deep in the gut, pinning him down. She collapses on the ground from exhaustion once she is certain he has no more strength in him. Her eyes flood with rage as she sees him die. Before the video concludes, the helicopter locates her and flies down to take her up. Thank you for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more recaps until next time. Have a nice day.